This is the English service of Radio Algeria International. It's time for the news.
In today's top stories, on the second day of the visit of the President of the Republic, Abdelmajid Tebboune, to the Sultanate of Oman, several memoranda of understanding have been signed between the two countries. The A3+ group, including Algeria, has strongly condemned the spiral of violence against civilians in Sudan, stressing the urgent need for a ceasefire between the parties to the conflict. As the Israeli occupation pursued its attacks on Gaza's northern part, the Palestinian presidency has condemned the decisions freshly voted by the Israeli parliament banning the UNRWA operations in the occupied Palestinian territories. Hello and welcome on Radio Algeria International. I'm Jamal Salmani. Starting today's news with several memoranda of understanding have been signed between Algeria and the Sultanate of Oman in several sectors as part of the state visit paid by President of the Republic, Mr. Abdelmajid Tebboune, to this brotherly country. The details of the visit with Asya Bikar.
On the second day of the visit of President Tebboune to the Sultanate of Oman, the two countries signed memoranda of understanding in the fields of education, employment, training, higher education and scientific research. Other memoranda were signed in the field of media, organizing, cooperation, events and conferences. Memoranda of understanding also have been signed in the fields of investment, promotion, financial services, environment and sustainable development. Earlier, the President of the Republic, Mr. Abdelmajid Tebboune, co-chaired with the Sultan of Oman, Haytham bin Tariq, in Muscat, talks between the delegations of both Algeria and Oman. The talks focused on bilateral cooperation between the two brotherly countries and ways and means to further promote them, in addition to issues besetting the Arab nation, the situation in the Middle East, and the current major international issues. A solemn welcome was granted earlier to the President of the Republic at the Royal Palace, Al Alam, by Sultan Haytham bin Tariq. Let's note that the President of the Republic headed to the Sultanate of Oman following his visit to Egypt. The visit of the President of the Republic to the Sultanate of Oman comes as part of the strengthening of ties of brotherliness, cooperation and consultation between the two brotherly countries.
President Tebboune met yesterday, Monday, in Muscat with representatives of the national community settled in the Sultanate of Oman. His meeting is part of the tradition perpetrated by President Tebboune during his visits abroad to listen to the national community's concerns. During this meeting, the President of the Republic listened to their concerns regarding several areas, including investment, higher education, scientific research, and transport. On the occasion, the members of the national community commended the development, achievements and growth witnessed by Algeria in recent years in all areas under the leadership of the President of the Republic, Abdelmajid Tebboune. They also expressed pride at the commitment of the President to preserving the message and legacy of the martyrs of the glorious liberation revolution. They also praised the constant concern of the President to stay in touch with the members of the national community all around the world. The Chief of Staff of the National People's Army, Army General Said Shingriha, has received at the headquarters of the ANP the Vice Minister of the Cuban Revolutionary Armed Forces, Lieutenant General Joaquim Quintasola. During the meeting, the two parties discussed the international security context, stressing the need to pool efforts to face up to challenges and explore ways and means to strengthen cooperation relations between the two countries. The two parties also exchanged views on issues of common concern. Army General Said Shingriha described the relations between Algeria and Cuba as strong and historic.
إن العلاقات بين الجزائر وجمهورية
Relations between Algeria and the Republic of Cuba are deep. They are distinguished by historical bonds of friendship inspired by immutable values and principles, which have laid the foundations for an exemplary bilateral cooperation based on mutual assistance, solidarity, as well as support for oppressed peoples and just causes around the world, notably the Sahrawi and Palestinian causes. The convergent positions of the two countries within within the non-aligned movement have been characterized by conformity and convergence that emanate from a common awareness of the need to establish a world movement that defends the interests of developing countries and rejects polarity.
He added that relations and consultations between the two countries have achieved continuous development.
لقد عرفت العلاقات بين بلدينا تطور.
Relations between the two countries have experienced continuous development in terms of consultations, coordination of positions on issues of common concern, and the promotion of multidimensional cooperation, whether at the political and economic level or in terms of human development, notably in the sectors of health, culture, science, and sports. Within the National People's Army, we are working on the strategic visions of the leaders of both our countries aimed at promoting partnership between our respective armies by creating a new dynamic in the field of military cooperation and setting up supporting adequate mechanisms.
ووضع الآليات المناسبة لتفعيلها.
Mr. Joaquim Quintas Sola, for his part, expressed his joy at visiting Algeria, praising on the occasion the firm will of the Army General to consolidate bilateral relations, military relations, to raise them to the level of the aspirations of the leaders of the two friendly countries. Now, the Assistant Secretary General and Director of the United Nations Development Programme UNDP Regional Bureau for Arab States, Abdullah Ad-Dardari, has been received by officials of the Energy and Mines Ministry as its headquarters here in Algiers to discuss the possibilities of developing cooperation in the field of energy. Asya Bekar has more.
During the meeting, the two parties examined the state of cooperation relations between Algeria and the UNDP and assess ongoing projects, particularly with the National Agency for the Promotion and Rationalization of Energy Use. Discussions focused mainly on ways and means to strengthen cooperation in terms of expertise exchange and technical assistance in ongoing projects related to energy efficiency and transition, the development of models and energy governance, in addition to the prospects for developing and extending such cooperation in order to extend it to other areas, notably renewable energies and the development and use of green hydrogen as an alternative energy to reduce the carbon footprint in the industrial sector and encourage clean and sustainable mobility. On the occasion, Mr. Al-Dardari expressed his interest in strengthening cooperation with Algeria in the field of renewable energies and energy transition.
Algeria's permanent representative to the United Nations, Ambassador Ammar Benjamin, has called for an immediate and permanent ceasefire in Gaza and Lebanon. Mr. Benjamin made the call at an Emergency Security Council meeting on the situation in the Middle East held at the request of Algeria, China and Russia.
The crises in the Middle East are interconnected and must be addressed together. Their root cause is very well known. It is the ongoing Israeli occupation of Arab lands. Recent events must not eclipse the central issue of aggression against the Palestinian people. In the short term, an immediate ceasefire in Gaza and Lebanon is essential to end the violence. In the long term, lasting peace requires that Palestinians enjoy their legitimate rights and that the Israeli occupation of all Arab territories is put to an end. In this regard, the Security Council must uphold its responsibilities.
Mr. Benjamin also reiterated Algeria's condemnation following the recent Israeli attacks carried out against Iran.
Algeria condemns in the strongest terms the recent military attacks by the Israeli occupation forces perpetrated against the Islamic Republic of Iran. We stand in full solidarity with Iran, condemning these attacks as violation of its sovereignty and a clear violation of the UN Charter and international law. The international community has a duty to curb the Israeli occupation and stop its continued escalation, which has brought the Middle East into an endless cycle of instability. Applying double standards to international laws weaken our global legal order, weaken the credibility of this very council. Today, our message remains the same. International law must be respected with no exception.
That was Algeria's permanent representative to the United Nations, Ambassador Ammar Benjama. You're listening to Radio Algeria International. As the Israeli army pursued its attacks on Gaza's northern part, the Palestinian presidency has condemned the decision freshly voted by the Israeli parliament banning the UNRWA operations in the occupied Palestinian territories. The presidency spokesman, Nabila Bourdaina, rejected the decision as running counter the international law and UN resolutions and as seeking to eliminate the refugees issue and to deny the right to return and to compensation. In a communique released by the news agency WEFA, he denounced the Israeli decision, saying it does not target the refugees only, but the UN and the international community as a whole. UNRWA denounced as outrageous the measure banning its activities in the occupied Palestinian territories, including occupied Jerusalem annexed by Israel in 1981. The head of UNRWA rejected the ban, saying that it created a serious precedent and would exacerbate the sufferings of the Palestinians. In a similar move, the head of the World Health Organization denounced the move he described as intolerable that would result in devastating consequences. The Israeli decision triggered off a wave of condemnations, notably by France, the EU, Germany and the US, which called on the Israeli authorities to not endorse the decision while reiterating that UNRWA plays a crucial role in Gaza. In other news, the so-called A3+ group made up of Algeria, Mozambique, Sierra Leone and Guyana has strongly condemned in New York the spiral of violence against civilians in Sudan, which is in the midst of an armed conflict, stressing the need for the parties to the conflict to commit to a ceasefire. During a Security Council meeting on the situation in Sudan, Algeria's permanent representative to the UN Ambassador Ammar Benjama said, on behalf of the A3+ group, that civilians continue to be subjected to unprecedented levels of destruction and major fighting.
It is difficult to find the accurate words to describe the appalling situation in Sudan and to express our sentiment of inability to provide the Sudanese people with the right response on the ground, while civilians continue to bear shocking patterns of the carnage in Sudan. We therefore strongly condemn the continued violence committed against civilians. Several products were adopted by the same council. Several initiatives have been initiated also outside this council to push for a peaceful solution. Unfortunately, they did not have the desired effect on the ground.
Mr. Benjama also stressed the urgent need to implement a ceasefire in order to protect civilians, calling the parties to the conflict to show restraint.
We have to identify the basis for a durable solution. Convincing the parties to commit to a ceasefire has to be our ultimate priority. This goal, however, must allow for contribution from all regional and international actors, driven by fairness, justice, goodwill, and international law, be it local or national. A ceasefire is imperative, and we are convinced that wisdom and restraint still have a place in Sudan. Acknowledging that the primary responsibility to protect civilians lies with the government of Sudan and all the parties in conflict.
For his part, the UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres has deplored the catastrophic humanitarian situation in Sudan, saying that both sides must immediately agree to a cessation of hostilities.
18 months have passed since brutal fighting erupted between the Sudanese armed forces and the Rapid Support Forces. The suffering is growing by the day, with almost 25 million people now requiring assistance. In recent days, we have heard shocking reports of mass killings and sexual violence in villages in Al Jazeera state in the east of the country. They are also enduring a nightmare of hunger, as more than 750,000 people face catastrophic food insecurity and famine conditions take hold in displacement sites in North Darfur, while millions struggle to feed themselves every day. We have consistently appealed to both sides to end the fighting and come to the negotiating table. But instead of lowering tensions, they are escalating military action. Resolution 2736, adopted earlier this year, sent a strong signal, but we need action on the ground.
Last Friday, 124 civilians were killed by the Armed Rapid Support paramilitary forces in an attack on a village south of Sudan's capital, Khartoum. The Polisario Front's representative to the UN and coordinator of the MINURSO, Sidi Mohamed Omar, has affirmed that Morocco's occupation of Western Sahara and its refusal to make concessions remain the main obstacle to a lasting peace. This, he recalled, was agreed on since the 90s and provides for the organization of a self-determination referendum in Western Sahara. In a statement made on the eve of the UN Security Council's vote on the renewal of the MINURSO's mandate, the Sahrawi official blamed the Moroccan state for the restrictions that hamper the UN mission's action. He also blamed some major powers for failing to adopt a decisive position guaranteeing the effective implementation of the UN Security Council's resolutions. In this respect, the Polisario Front's representative recalled the responsibility of France, whom he described as the main supporter of Morocco's occupation, and the US in seriously contributing to promoting a fair solution to the Western Sahara issue. He further recalled that the military and intelligence alliance linking Morocco to Israel constituted a serious threat to the region's security and stability. In the Democratic Republic of the Congo, about a quarter of the population continues to face acute hunger. According to FAO's latest data in emergencies, the impact of conflict on agricultural livelihoods in eastern part of the country is worrying. Compared to last year's 25% of livestock keepers reported animal losses and 35% of affected households farmed on less cropland. This is Radio Algeria International. Next on our program, Our Health Magazine.
Hello and welcome to this new edition of your weekly program, The Health Magazine. International Stuttering Awareness Day, ISAD, or International Stammering Awareness Day, is an annual celebration held on October 22nd each year. The event was first held in the UK and Ireland in 1998. It is intended to raise public awareness of the issues faced by millions of people, 1% of the world's population, who stutter or stammer. Every year, stuttering communities and associations around the world get together, put on events, and campaign to highlight how certain aspects of society can be difficult for people who stammer, to challenge negative attitudes and discrimination, and to debunk myths that people who stammer are nervous or less intelligent. ISAD also celebrates the many notable figures who stammer, who have made a mark on the world now and throughout history in the fields of science, politics, philosophy, art, cinema, and music. Now, what is stuttering and how is it likely to influence one's life? Stuttering is a speech condition that disrupts the normal flow of speech. Fluency means having an easy and smooth flow and rhythm when speaking. With stuttering, the interruptions in flow happen often and cause problems for the speaker. Other names for stuttering are stammering and childhood onset fluency disorder. People who stutter know what they want to say, but they have a hard time saying it. For example, they may repeat or stretch out a word, a syllable, or a consonant or vowel sound, or they may pause during speech because they've reached a word or sound that is hard to get out. Stuttering is common among young children as a usual part of learning to speak. Some young children may stutter when their speech and language abilities aren't developed enough to keep up with what they want to say. Most children outgrow this type of stuttering, called developmental stuttering. But sometimes stuttering is a long-term condition that remains into adulthood. This type of stuttering can affect self-esteem and communicating with other people. What are the symptoms? Stuttering symptoms may include having a hard time starting a word, phrase, or sentence, stretching out a word or sounds within a word, repeating a sound, syllable, or word, brief silence for certain syllables or words, or pausing before or within a word, adding extra words if expecting to have problems moving to the next word, a lot of tension, tightness, or movement of the face or upper body when saying a word, anxiety about talking, not being able to communicate well with others. These actions may happen when stuttering, rapid eye blinks, trembling of the lips or jaw, unusual face movements sometimes called facial tics, head nodding, tightening of fists. Stuttering may be worse when the person is excited, tired, or under stress, or when feeling self-conscious, hurried, or pressured. Situations such as speaking in front of a group or talking on the phone can be especially hard for people who stutter. But most people who stutter can speak without stuttering when they talk to themselves and when they sing or speak along with someone else. When to see a doctor or speech-language pathologist? It's common for children between the ages of 2 and 5 years to go through periods when they may stutter. For most children, this is part of learning to speak, and it gets better on its own. But stuttering that continues may need treatment to improve speech fluency. Call your healthcare professional for a referral to a specialist in speech and language called a speech-language pathologist. Or you can contact the speech-language pathologist directly for an appointment. Ask for help if stuttering lasts more than 6 months, happens also with other speech or language problems, happens more often or continues as the child grows older, includes muscle tightening or physically struggling when trying to speak, affects the ability to effectively communicate at school or at work or in social situations, causes anxiety or emotional problems such as fear of or not taking part in situations that require speaking, or begins as an adult. The causes. Researchers continue to study the underlying causes of developmental stuttering. A combination of factors may be involved. Developmental stuttering that happens in children while they're learning to speak, is called developmental stuttering. Possible causes of developmental stuttering include problems with speech motor control. Some evidence shows